Good morning. My name is Rabbi Tamerhoulet. Called the first hybrid meeting of Residential and Manufactured Structural Board of July 13th, 2022 to order at 9:30. Debbie, please call a roll, please.
Yes, sir. Acting as chair, Rabbi Tamerhoulet.
Yes.
Thank you. Gordon Anslow is virtual. Gordon? Gordon Anslow? Okay, we'll come back to Gordon. James Austin should be connected virtually. James? Thank you. Forrest Barnes is excused. John Camiller is excused. Rich Fry? Thank you. Emily Kemper? Douglas Lethin? Douglas Lethin? Rich Tover? Thank you. Gordon Anslow? Thank you, Gordon. Douglas Lethin? Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum if you wanted to continue without Douglas.
Okay.
We'll just note him when he arrives.
Okay. Is it possible to hear?
Mr. Chair, I think we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. I think we're going to hold it for just a minute here until we can get sound in the room.
Okay.
Gordon Anslow, could you say you're here again, please?
I'm here. I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay. We have sound in the room now, so go ahead and take it away, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Members, do you have any change to the agenda or the order of business? I hear none. I, acting as chair, Tamerhoulet, rule the agenda and order of business approved. Members, do you have any changes or amendments to the draft minutes of April 6, 2022?
Nope.
I hear none. I, acting chair, rule the draft meeting minute of April 6, 2022 final. The next regular meeting is scheduled for October 5th, 2022. Right now, Mr. In, the policy analyst, to address the public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ian Paik, analyst with the division. We have received one request for public comment. However, they will speak later in the meeting on a specific issue topic. Outside of that, we will hold the line open for just a moment to see if anyone in the Zoom would like to provide general public comment to the board. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes general public comment.
Present the information.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Tony Rocco with the division. For the record, with a quick program update this morning for the board. The public code amendment proposal period is now open for the 2023 ORSC. It is open until August 21st, and you can visit our adoption webpage for more information about submitting the A public code amendment proposal. Our technical team, for this iteration, we are focusing on taking a look at existing amendments, ways to improve and simplify the residential code, And those staff recommendations from our team will be part of the committee and board review. Our team's also currently working on finalizing the OSSC. That's anticipated to be effective October 1st here in just a few months. And that includes those low-rise provisions which this board addressed at its last meeting. The team is also finalizing the OMSC in companion with the OSSC. And to update the board about the mechanical and energy programs, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Mark Heizer, unless there are any questions for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Tamerhoulet and members of the board. For the record, Mark Heizer with the division here to discuss some of the additional energy provisions. Wanted to let everyone know that the division has completed its adoption of rules for the consideration of residential energy code changes, and we will be looking to have that apply during this code cycle. It does provide for consistency of the methodology used for putting in proposals so that the Code Committee and Board can equally compare what is presented for code changes. All stakeholders as well have an opportunity to be able to look at other proposals and be able to make, the public can make informed comments to the board. Again, this will be used for the 2023 ORSC Chapter 11 proposals during this period. The division has developed a baseline set of revisions to Chapter 11 in order to meet Executive Order 17-20, and yet at the same time still provide options for builders. That's the extent of the energy and mechanical portion, unless there are questions from the members of the board today. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item in the agenda is the board selection of committee chair and members. I will ask Mr. In, policy analyst, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ian Paik, analyst with the division. The division requests that the board review and select a code review committee for the 2023 Oregon Residential Specialty Code and also select a committee chairperson. A little background, following the April 6th board meeting, the division issued solicitation for interested individuals from June 1st to June 24th. In that, 17 applications were received, and those individuals are listed in your agenda packet. Lastly, the division recommends a 7 to 9 member committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I acting chair suggested some names to Building Codes Division. From the list, 7 members, and we had a volunteer from a fire marshal that is available to attend this meeting to provide his expertise in the fire code. And the members I suggested are Elizabeth Banga, assistant building official to the Clackamas County, Jonathan Balkma, the building official of Albany, Natalie Gideon, she's the supervisor of plan examiners for City of Portland, and next one is Kevin Rose, lead engineers, Northwest Energy, and Rex Turner from Home Builder, And from residential construction, Jamin Bear. And from utility and energy, Kevin Doles. This is 7 members with David Mills, State Fire Marshal, volunteers to attend the committee meetings and provide his expertise related to the fire code. We still have, a couple members if we go to 9, and members if you have any suggestions or comment, please provide it to the Building Codes Division. Thank you. Is there a vote for that, or is there a?
Through the chair, Rich Fry.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so the names that you provided, if we have some other additional people that we'd like to see on that, how do we submit that then to Building Codes Division, and wouldn't we then finalize this after that recommendation?
Well, you can go ahead right now if you have any names.
Okay, I would like to have Carrie Blackburn on there as well,
Cherry.
and Mr. Sheffield from Maury County.
No, okay.
I guess Adley Sheffield, building official,
Okay.
and Carrie Blackburn. Those are the 2 that I would recommend also be on the committee.
Any other recommendation from the members?
So how many committee members does that bring us up to then?
Right now we have 9.
That seems fine.
Okay. No. Okay, then we have 9 members, and the list is going to Building Codes Division. And is it the scheduled meetings are already scheduled or not yet?
Not yet, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay. Don't have any appeals? None. Unfinished business? None. Next item is the implementation, code language implementation of Senate Bill 762. I will ask Andy Boulton, Senior Policy Advisor, to present to.
Thank you, Chair Tamerhoulet. Andy Boulton, Senior Policy Advisor with the division. In the 2021 legislative session, the Oregon Legislature passed Senate Bill 762. It was subsequently signed into law by the governor. It was an omnibus bill addressing many different aspects of wildfire preparation, prevention, mitigation, and recovery. It included many directives for several Oregon agencies. Sections 12, 12A, and 12B direct BCD to amend the ORSC. The amendments must change the scope of Section R327's wildfire hazard mitigation standards from just being available for local adoption to being required for new construction in high and extreme wildfire risk zones in the wildland-urban interface. Additionally, the law directs the division to amend R327 of the ORSC to include standards for additions to existing dwellings and for replacement of existing exterior elements covered by R327. The code amendments are required to be enacted no later than October 1st, 2022, and mandatory no later than April 1st, 2023. The proposed code language and the proposed rule language are both included in your board packet. Ultimately, this item will require a motion from the board, and if the board elects to either approve or amend and approve, then the motion should include a finding that the added cost, if any, is necessary for the health and safety of the occupants or the public, or necessary to conserve scarce resources. Finally, as mentioned earlier, the division did receive a request for public comment on this item from Steve Strawn, and he is here in the room and has also provided some written testimony that was distributed to the board members. Additionally, we've received some email testimony that we have and is going to be distributed to the board members as well, and I'm not sure if there's someone here that is going to be speaking on that item, but if they are, they could potentially testify after Steve. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Please, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to speak to the code change proposal that I'm offering. The changes to section R327.8, point 2.8. As an industry, we've sort of faced this issue with the current language in that is terribly unclear to people. We have, within the industry, people are unclear what this means. Building officials are unclear what this means. So what we've done is brought together a code change proposal that clearly spells out what the requirements are. If you think about for example, the 20-minute fire rating is based on what? Based on what standards? So we've put in specific standards. The glazing, is it both panes are tempered or single pane tempered? Is it multi-pane, non-tempered? So the code change proposal clearly lays that all out. We've provided compliance requirements for entry doors, compliance requirements for door glazing, including entry doors and garage doors, what that glazing should be consisting of. This language is what we put together as a fenestration industry, in 2007, 2008 or so, and it eventually went into the California Building Code for their requirements, and has remained unchanged since. The language is consistent with that, other than the one piece that was SFM 7A.1 and .2, which is a California State Fire Marshal Code test standard, which is really nobody that I'm aware of in the industry has used that. So that language is pretty solid. It's effectively what I've added into this code change proposal. The cost, estimated cost, there is no cost. All you're doing is clarifying what you have to comply with. In fact, it may make it easier or less expensive to comply with this because it is very clearly spelled out what the requirements are. With that, I'm open to questions.
Thanks. Do we have any question from the board members to the presenter?
I would add, if I may, I have taken this same language to the state of Washington as they work on their wildland urban interface codes, and a couple of different hearings with them, and it seems to be quite well accepted within that code development group as well. So what we're asking is that we have some level of consistency in the West Coast. The term "the West is burning" is an unfortunate truth, and what we're trying to do is help to understand what the requirements for glazing should be. There's It's, again, it's not a change really, it's a clarification of the requirements for the fenestration components of the building.
To the chair, this is Gordon Anslow.
Okay, go ahead.
I looked this over and I will say I didn't like delve into it, with a microscope, but I think that the issues about the need for clarification are well taken. Understand the importance of the whole intent to address the combustibility of the exterior envelope of structures. Generally, I have to say, having looked through this with some background in sort of fire protection issues, it looks to me to be, I would say, fairly benign in that it is not advancing a bunch of funny business that, we don't want to see. I think it's just asking for reasonable clarification. And if anyone looks at it, for instance, and says, well, if you have a wood door that's, style and rail construction with glazing, and, it's an 1 3/4 inch thick of wood, that's unacceptable. I mean, it's better to ferret these things out now, to which end this, I think, does a good job of saying, just to be clear, this is what a typical exterior door, is like, rather than we adopt stuff that's a little bit vaguer, more vague, and then people have to come back and sort of, fight back to zero. So it looked to me to be well considered and thought it was trying to give some certainty to people that are in the business of, in this case, obviously manufacturing, but also for all the people that are then purchasing and installing elements of the exterior envelope of these buildings. So I think it's well taken. And I mentioned that if anyone has specific stuff they think, oh, this is like way off the mark from what we were trying to accomplish, that would be good to hear about. But otherwise, I think it's a good starting place, and the efforts were well intended. And if this stuff is adopted or integrated, I think it will help save a lot of after the fact questions that might arise. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may jump in.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Again, for the record, Tony Rocco with the division. So a couple of things here, Mr. Strawn, thank you for the proposal. And Mr. Anslow, I agree that some of these items are clarifications. There are some technical changes in here. We've done a pretty thorough analysis of it. And so it does change the provisions that currently exist in R327. And the way we were proposing the changes to R327 and the way we were implementing the Senate Bill 762 is that we were not changing any of the technical provisions in R327, and so we're kind of holding to that. There are some ways maybe to provide some clarification in the interim. We have interpretations, we have technical bulletins, there's things that our technical team can do to provide clarification where there are questions. And then there's also an opportunity, I believe there's a 2-year period that's specified in Senate Bill 762 to where the technical provisions could be adjusted moving forward. But at this time, our understanding is that we're not going to be making any technical changes to the provisions of R327. And again, at the pleasure of the board to discuss it further. Thank you.
Through the chair, if I may comment, I appreciate the comments, Tony, that helpful. What I intended with this was to not make any technical changes, even though it's adding a lot of verbiage. It's just clarifying what's missing in there. So if there's an opportunity to work with you in terms of a interpretation of this or a code commentary, if you will, to make sure that people understand this, because as I've said, I've gotten an awful lot of calls, and in fact from my friends in the industry, our competitors, what does this really mean? Do we go this way or this way? And so the intent was to clarify that when we call for multi-pane, what does that mean? It means that you're going to have at least a layer of tempered glass in that light, and that was the intent because of the testing that we've proven, or actually through the University of California, Berkeley, testing back in 2003 or 4 or something like that, had proven that one layer of tempered glass adds a fairly significant factor of safety. So that was all clarifying that. What does it mean by, it's not just an IG or a dual pane glass, it's one layer at least must be tempered, and that was spelled out. I have changed also, because I'm not aware of many entry doors, exterior entry wood style rail doors that are in 1 3/8. Most of them are 1 3/4, so I adjusted that to fit what the industry typically provides. Other than that, I don't think there's any real technical changes, but if we can work together in a code commentary or an understanding of how this should be interpreted, that would be real helpful.
Through the chair. Thank you, Mr. Strawn. So agreed on the majority of what you said. We absolutely, at the pleasure of the board, have the opportunity to put together a technical bulletin. I think it would be more than an interp, adding some clarification, and if the board wants to provide a recommendation to our division to prepare something, that I think we'd welcome that recommendation. To go back to the provisions, if we look at what's currently in R327, just as a reminder, while it was based loosely on California's R338, it's not exactly the same, particularly with glazing. And so when we talk about multi-layered glazing, we're talking about just multi-layered glazing that meets Chapter 11. There is no tempered pane required to meet R327 as it is printed today. And that was the language that was agreed upon amongst all of our stakeholders, including the Home Builders Association, Fire Service, and the board. Thank you.
If I comment, that's helpful because it's always been interpreted that it was not just an IG unit, which is effectively required everywhere in the code anyhow through the energy code provisions, but that shall be tempered multi-glazed panels, or tempered glass multi-layered glazed panels was the confusing part. In fact, that's the most confusing part to most of the folks that are trying to understand how to implement this. So to your point, putting together a technical bulletin, we can do that. If it's the desire of this body to not include a tempered light, then that's fine. It doesn't prove out with the testing that we've done in terms of providing an extra measure of safety, but gosh, what's a layer of glass cost compared to a structure? So we'll work together on that.
Tony, go ahead.
Again, through the chair, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Strawn. So we adopted these provisions back in 2019, and there was a lot of work that went into the provisions. There was a lot of discussion about glazing at that time amongst all of the stakeholders, and I think it was pretty clearly understood of the options that are listed in that short provision. And while testing methods and maybe pointers back to R308.4 for hazardous locations might be helpful in a technical bulletin and things like that, the list that you see there in R327.2.8 is clearly just a list of options. Multi-layered glazing would be a Chapter 11 compliant window. There would not be a requirement for a tempered pane within that glazing. Thank you.
I think my comment to that going forward, and I appreciate that. I want to work forward into the next version and see if we can't put something together. But that's outside of this discussion. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Through the chair, Rich Fry.
Go ahead, Rich.
We're talking about all of the Section R 327 wildlife mitigation, correct? Or are we only talking about glazing at this point?
The whole section.
Okay. I have a couple of clarifications. On R 327-2 or .2 applications, it states on or after April 1, 2023, newly constructed dwellings. And I would believe that that should say permits applied for after that date, because you could apply for a permit before April 1st of 2023 and build after. But if your permit is in before that date, should it not apply to the old standard?
Through the chair, if I may ask a question. Thank you, Mr. Fry. Just so I have it correct here, is it permits applied for on or after April 1 is how you intend it to read?
Yes, because the way I read it now, it says if you have a newly constructed building on or after that date, and I believe it was meant to be applications. It's under applications, but that's not what it says.
Okay, thank you.
All right. One other clarification that I had was under the rule language 918-480-0010 under sub 5. The last line of that, should that not read that it's only until the, that the effective date, that they're only good until April 1 of 2023, that the local jurisdictions don't have precedent over the application or implementation of this new rule?
Mr. Chair, if I may. The intent is that the local adoption will, at that point, at the point of April 1st, 2023, then be preempted by the statewide maps.
So if I could, Rich Fry again. So where it says R 327 will remain in effect until April 1, 2023. To me, that doesn't say that it will go away at that point, but I just am clarifying that. That's why I thought maybe it should say will only remain in effect until April 1, 2023 for the local jurisdictions. And maybe that's how everybody else read it. That's not how I read it.
We can adjust the language on that last line if the board would like to.
Okay.
And that's everything from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
To the board, Gordon Anslow here.
Go ahead.
Two things quickly regarding Rich's comments about the clarification of permits applied for April 1st, 2023. I just wanted to say that there's a long-standing practice of that the day in which you go down to the building department, turn in for permit, you take a snapshot of what the regulatory envelope is on the day that you turned in, because when you turned that in, you did whatever you had to do to clarify that you complied with everything. And I think to just clarify that is the sort of the thing that on whatever the current rules are on the day on which you make application for permit is the way it should be. It will be consistent with the way it's been for a very, very long time. I mean, I go back with the stuff for 40 years, and that's pretty much been the standard. So I hope that kind of remains the standard. And the other thing I just wanted to say quickly about the whole all the clarifications or any confusion that surrounds these exterior materials and doors and windows and so forth. One thing that's a little different about this than a lot of other things is if there, let's just say that there's a fire, and there, of course, there will be another conflagration somewhere, forest fires, houses get burnt down, and people make insurance claims, attorneys get involved, and to the degree there is a larger amount of vagueness or fuzziness around what the precise requirements are, one can imagine that you are kind of leaving open more opportunity for clever attorneys, those nasty people, clever attorneys to say, hey, you know what, this house was built in this way, it didn't comply with the code, we're denying the claim and stuff. In the interest, and this is a bit of a different animal than other code requirements, like let's just say, to pick one, an energy code requirement about the amount of insulation in your attic, let's just say. It's not likely that amount of insulation in your attic is going to trigger, any legal action, or be rather much less likely. However, this particular category of stuff regarding the susceptibility of exteriors of buildings in areas that are subject to wildfire exposure, it must be fraught with a lot of legal people looking at the particulars of any particular case in which someone's making a big claim with an insurance company. So I just wanted to say that as we're going through this and coming up with what the final arrangement is that we have in the final wording, to keep in mind that the interest in this extends beyond just, a little confusion with the door and window industry into possibly setting up something that could result in a lot of confusion and difficulty for the state regulatory folks in explaining in the context of a lawsuit someone's bringing about, why my insurance company won't pay to rebuild my house because I had, the wrong door frame or something. I just wanted to clarify and point out that this really is in quite a different category than many other things that we do. You're more likely to have catastrophic stuff that goes on leading to legal action. Anyway, thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. Any further discussion? We need a motion for this item.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Andy Boulton, Senior Policy Advisor for the division. I just wanted to, since we got that one testimony in the basically last minute, I wanted to just really quickly suggest that we open it up for a potential comment from the home builders who submitted that testimony, just in case that they have someone online that would like to provide testimony relating to it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, we need a motion from the floor. I think we have some amendment presented from the members, and also we may include the recommendation to have a technical interpretation or technical commentary to clarify the items that are in the gray area.
Through the chair, this is Emily. Do we only need a motion because an amendment has been suggested?
I think you can have, we have a motion if there is to take it as it is or with the amendments, or disapprove.
Okay, I didn't realize that a motion was needed on this one.
It is. There is a motion to approve the division recommendation or amend the recommendation or disapprove.
Could, I remember that there was a motion, or I'm sorry, an amendment suggested, but I don't recall what it was. Could whomever suggested it reframe the amendment?
I think Rich Fry, the proposed to amend section 327.2 application, and also the item 5 of the, the 918.
The memo?
Yeah, the 918-480.
Yeah.
0010.
Here's the board, Rich Fry, that is exactly correct. Those were my two recommendations for amendments.
Okay, Rich, could you restate what exactly the
Yes.
recommendations are?
Yes, I can. So in R 327.2 applications, that it says applications applied for previous to the date of April 1, 2023, which we all realize that that's how things have been working, but I just wanted to clarify it. And then again, on number 5, on the last line, right now it says R 327 will remain in effect until April 1, 2023. I just wanted to say something like will only remain in effect, so that we understand that once this goes into effect, the local jurisdictions can't supersede our requirements. And those were my two changes.
That all makes sense to me. Is there someone that can help us write down exactly what is needed in order to execute the motion to amend and approve? If so, I would be happy to make a motion to amend and approve the recommended code amendments.
It's in item 7,
Yes.
and it says.
Yeah, I see it now. I didn't
Okay.
see it before.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I can jump in here just for 1 second.
Go ahead.
Excuse me. Again, Tony Rocco with the division. Not to interrupt, but we do have an individual with their hand raised on the screens behind us here at the table. If you'd like to recognize Mr. Farrington for any comment during the discussion here.
Who's the?
Tanner Farrington.
Tanner?
Tanner.
Mr. Tanner, welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Is it, I realize I'm jumping in late here. Is it too late to provide comments?
No, it is not. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. I really appreciate it. So for the record, my name is Tanner Farrington. I'm representing the Oregon Fire Marshals Association. We represent fire code officials across the state of Oregon. Just wanted to provide a couple of comments and suggestions, and appreciate you letting us do that at the last minute here. Just want to say, first of all, appreciate the modification of 327.2 to remove the language in their entirety. I think that was some discussion, based on some discussion from the last meeting, and that's appreciated. Also want to provide the suggestion to remove 327.2.1 for the subdivision infill exception. It creates some potential issues. It's not clear what a subdivision is or how that's defined. Basically, we feel like that creates kind of a loophole. I think there was some discussion around that in the last meeting. But I just want to provide that suggestion that that language gets removed. I think it's going to move away from the intent of 762, which was to protect communities. And just because other structures were built without meeting those requirements, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't protect new homes being constructed. So anyway, appreciate you guys taking the time to allow us to make those comments. Thank you.
Through the chair, this is Emily. Mr. Farrington, so you're also recommending, in addition to the previous amendments that we discussed, that R 327.2.1, the subdivision infill exception, be stricken entirely. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Through the chair, if someone from the Fire Marshals Association thinks that that could be a potential loophole, I'm inclined to trust that recommendation. So I'm comfortable adding that to our amendments.
Okay. Any further?
Through the chair, this is Alana at the Building Codes Division. Do you mind if I jump in on this one?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So the intent of that infill exception is really to provide a transition for those subdivisions that are already under construction. It was discussed during the deliberations on the bill on Senate Bill 762, and it's actually part of why there's the language in 762 about revisiting after 2 years. And our plan was basically to go pull out that exception in that 2-year period after that transition has happened and, you know, the build out of these subdivisions has occurred. So just wanted to provide a little bit of context there. That was kind of the idea, was that we'd have it for this first period of our implementation. Then we'd pull it out. Subdivisions will be, it should become moot pretty quickly with the rate of construction right now. And then that we pull that out in our next update of the residential code. So just wanted to provide that context.
Mr. Chair, Tanner Farrington has his hand raised yet again.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Cox, for the clarification. Appreciate that. I think you actually mentioned that in the last meeting, and I had forgotten about that. And I apologize for kind of causing a delay here. Could I ask a clarification, which is, so we see development come through all the time. I guess if there's an existing development and then additional, let's say a land use application comes in to subdivide property that's kind of already in a subdivision. I guess is the intent that you've got a planned subdivision, it's already approved to be built, and this would only apply in that case? Or if you've got property, a big parcel that's part of kind of a development, and it gets subdivided and additional lots are added, is the intent to allow this to be used for that too? Because that's kind of where we've seen in at least one case where it could be interpreted that this would allow a piece of property to be subdivided, additional lots to be created, and homes built on those new lots to not necessarily have to meet the requirements of R 327. Just hoping for a little clarification. Thank you.
Through the chair, and I'm going to look to Tony on the teeny tiny screen here to keep me honest, but my understanding is that those, if there was an additional kind of subdivision that is attached to or next to an existing subdivision, it would be its own for the purposes of calculating that build out and the 50%. Tony, can you confirm that's your understanding?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. So the intent would not be that because it's going in next to an existing subdivision that wasn't fire hardened, that they wouldn't have to fire harden either. If that new subdivision or those new lots being added next to an existing subdivision weren't built out, then they would all have to fire harden.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Cox, for that explanation. So with that understanding that it's not intended to apply except for kind of existing approved subdivisions that have already gone through land use, then I'll withdraw that request with the understanding that that was discussed in the development of 762. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe I can just throw in that that language is confusing, and I know we struggled with it. We talked about it at the RAC. So I think that's another area where we were hoping to provide some clarity through a technical bulletin. So appreciate the discussion about clarity and using those tools to kind of help folks understand this language.
Thank you.
Okay, so then I think we're just back to our original amendments, right?
Correct.
Can someone confirm that we need to have very specific language around, I thought we needed to have very specific language around the amendments in order to make the motion to amend the code.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Andy Boulton, Senior Policy Advisor with the division. The motion language itself is in the help sheet, and what I can do, if it would help, is to quickly go through my understanding of the amendments, and you can use the motion as it's written, and we can just confirm that my understanding of the amendments that the board wishes to implement is accurate, and then the motion that's on the help sheet itself will be fine.
And that was Andy speaking?
Yes.
Okay, Andy, as long as you're keeping track of this, I'm fine making a motion.
Well, let's find out. Let's find out about
Okay.
track. So I have one amendment to the code language to replace the newly constructed buildings after April 1 with instead permits applied for on or after April 1.
Okay.
And then the other one I have adding language to into the rule language itself to emphasize that R327 will only remain in effect for prior local adoption until April 1, 2023. So really just making it clear that those local adoption areas where it was adopted locally will no longer be in effect after April 1, 2023.
Okay. All right, great. With that said, then I will make a motion to amend and approve the division's recommended code amendments and forward to the administrator for rulemaking and subsequent adoption, with the finding that the added cost, if any, is necessary to the health and safety of the occupants or the public or necessary to conserve scarce resources, with the amendments that Andy just articulated.
To the board, Rich Fry, I second that.
Thank you. Can you call roll?
Yes, sir. Gordon Anslow? This is for a yes or a nay vote.
Or did you call Gordon Anslow?
Yes.
My vote is yes.
Thank you. James Austin?
Yes.
Rich Fry?
Yes.
Emily Kemper?
Yes.
Douglas Lethin? Rich Tover?
Yes.
Douglas Lethin? Rabi Tamerhoulet as acting chair?
Yes.
Okay, without Douglas Lethin's vote, we have a 6, and motion passes.
Thank you. I want to just add that there is a recommendation to have a technical bulletin issued by Building Codes Division to provide clarification. Next item is the announcement. Do we have any announcement? None?
Excuse me, through the chair, can I make a quick comment on the item that we just voted on? Just
Okay, go
for
ahead.
kind of the record to think about.
Go ahead.
One is with regard to the trigger date of permits applied for by 4/1/23. I think it might be not a bad idea if this is going to get fleshed out in writing to make some reference to a fairly common standard, which is applications deemed complete for acceptance. One can imagine a scenario where somebody comes in with a roll of newspapers and fills out your permit application and say, well, I applied for it, but there is a pretty common standard of the act of applying for permit should include, a complete application that is ready to go in. And I've been in this for 40 years and have seen times where you have new codes coming in, and people will bring in really substandard stuff. They're just trying to get get their chit in so they don't have to comply with the new stuff. But that's pretty normal standard, that the acceptance of a permit sort of presumes that you are coming in with a complete application. And then the second item is with regard to the business of the applicability of this in subdivisions. It's not uncommon, and probably, at least in my experience, not uncommon in rural subdivisions or, less intensive downtown, densely developed city subdivisions. You have a big piece of land and it's got kind of its initial approval for subdivision, and there's multiple phases to it. And like they develop the first phase and the infrastructure goes in and they're selling lots and stuff. The thing that is in the back of my mind about this stuff is what you would kind of hate to see, if it was possible to avoid it, is kind of innocent, people that want to buy a lot and build a house in some reasonable period of time, buy a finished lot that's an approved lot for which you can go get a permit and go build right now. And then the rules change, and then all of a sudden they find they can't do that. So now they spend a lot of money on a lot, and they kind of get a rude shock. I think with regard to using the term in established subdivisions, I think it would be useful to make a clarification about fully approved, essentially ready to build lots. If somebody, and particularly maybe even they've sold, what all I'm thinking of is trying to avoid, if possible, a rude shock for somebody that comes up in kind of good faith and says, well, it's a legal lot. I can go get a permit for it tomorrow and buy it. Then the rules change, and now they can't build without spending a lot more money. So if there is going to be any clarification around this stuff, I think it might be good, rather than just saying that it's in a subdivision, to maybe clarify the status of a particular lot as to whether or not, well, it's in a future phase of a subdivision, because that could drag on for a very long time. I mean, I think we've all seen rural subdivisions that originally got, sort of the initial approval of the whole concept, a very long time ago, and it takes them a very long time to go through the process of then actually taking individual phases. So I don't think you want to leave something really open-ended. So just saying that something is in a subdivision to me, is really vague, and I think it would be better to maybe say, on this date, if you have a legally created lot for which you could go get a permit and build a house and connect all the utilities and stuff, it would be maybe save a little grief down the road for somebody, including maybe the people that are involved in applying these regulations.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. If there is no further business, the July 13th, 2022 Residential and Manufactured Structure Board meeting is adjourned at 10:31. Thank you. Have a good day.